In 1971, for the first time in 5 years, the Oakland Raiders did not play in the conference championship. Disaster stalked the Raiders, pro football's winningest team the past 5 years, as they crushed the Rams, 49ers, and Colts in preseason. Running back Uric Dixon was gone for the year. Receiver Warren Wells was gone for the year. Running back Charlie Smith was gone until the final games. What would have happened if the Dallas Cowboys had lost Dwayne Thomas, Calvin Hill, and Bob Hayes? Or if Miami lost Zonka, Kick, and Warfield? They would have dropped from contention. Yet in 1971, despite losing players responsible for 3,000 yards and 18 touchdowns, the Silver and Black remained feared championship contenders because of a dedicated organization and sterling field leadership from gifted head coach John Madden, talented veteran assistants Oliver Spencer, Tom Doms, Ray Malavese, and Bob Zeman, skillful trainer George Anderson, and capable equipment director Dick Romansky. There is no substitute for victory now, so the true greatness of the Raiders must remain in their future and their glorious past. But if battling insurmountable odds is still a virtue, then in 1971 the Silver and Black may well have had their finest hour.
Meanwhile, the Oakland Raiders were all smiles because they were heavy favorites to beat the Pats, who in recent years have been the Patsies. The Raiders started with all the pride, poise, and power that they've exhibited in the preseason when they had their best record ever, 5-1. Number 28, rookie Clarence Davis supplied the power as he went 39 yards on this play. Then Pete Banaszak put the Raiders on top 6-0 with his 4-yard scamper.
The league season opened in New England's new stadium against New England's new quarterback, Jim Plunkett. The Raiders unveiled 3 rookie starters of their own. Number 31 safety Jack Tatum was one, and he recovered 2 fumbles. Despite severe personnel losses, Raider running behind number 63, Gene Upshaw, showed promise with another newcomer, Clarence Davis, gliding for 39 yards. Pete Banaszak had the lone Oakland score as he slashed into the end zone. But inches spelled the Raiders' doom. And in the end, Plunkett passed his Patriots to a 20-6 upset win. It was the last time the Oakland Raiders would lose for 9 weeks.
Things were busting out all over in San Diego's Balboa Stadium when the Oakland Raiders came to town. Sid Gilman was busting out with pride and enthusiasm, for his Chargers had upset the Chiefs in their opening game. Raider coach John Madden was busting out with the worries because on opening day Oakland had been upset by the Patriots and had taken a physical beating as well. But even worse than that was the fact that Darryl LaMonica and the famed Raider offense had scored a mere 6 points against New England. Could it be that Oakland was in trouble? It looked that way as the Chargers grabbed everything that came in their direction. The way the Raiders were playing, it was enough to make any coach hopping mad. But then the Raider defense snapped to life, and Charger quarterback John Hadel and his receivers were engulfed in a crush of black shirts. And then at long last, the Oakland offense roared to life as number 28 Clarence Davis inspired the ground game. And Darryl LaMonica was his old self again as he and Fred Biletnikoff teamed for 5 receptions and 2 scores, which put the Raiders ahead 28-0. Then reserve quarterback Ken Stabler mopped up on a 1-yard sweep, and the Chargers' humiliation was complete. For San Diego, it was one of those days when they looked on in wonder and decided they didn't like what they saw. Unfortunately, not even pure oxygen could help because the Raiders had stormed to victory with a vengeance, 34-0, and it was enough to take your breath away.
In San Diego, Oakland faced the second of 4 demanding consecutive road games. The Raider defense dominated as All-Pro Willie Brown challenged John Hadel's air attack. Rookie end Horace Jones, number 82, and Harold Rice, number 67, blasted in on Hadel and forced the Chargers into desperate gambles, made even more desperate when the determined Silver and Black dug in and refused to yield. And then the Raiders' famed precision passing flashed into action. Darryl LaMonica to Fred Biletnikoff accounted for 2 scores. Clarence Davis behind blocking by Shell, Upshaw, Beeler, Jim Otto, and Bob Brown raced in for another. Middle backer Dan Connors picked off 2 interceptions. And as he and Darryl looked on, Ken Stabler finished the Chargers. The lopsided 34-0 triumph was Oakland's first shutout ever over San Diego. Next, in Cleveland for a Monday night national TV game. LaMonica's throwing hand was giving him trouble. Early in the contest, the offense missed by inches. But the undefeated Browns weren't missing and led 14-0. Then the Raider rookie wreckers went to work. Linebacker Phil Villapiano shut down the corner. Horace Jones shut down passes. And Jack Tatum made a great interception in return. Darryl arched a bomb to number 87, tight end Raymond Chester. And utilizing the diverse design of the Raider attack, he then threw a screen to Marv Hubbard, who powered for 31 yards. The relentless Raiders rolled for 24 fourth-quarter points. Clarence Davis put Oakland ahead 24-20, and Banaszak finished Cleveland off as the nation learned that though the Raiders had lost key players, including veteran Tom Keating with a broken leg in this game, they had lost none of their class and courage.
The Oakland Raiders visited Denver, and all they wanted to do was cut the Broncos down to size. And they succeeded. Denver's problem wasn't that they lacked a big play. Floyd Little went 74 yards on this one, and it led to a field goal. Number 54, Chip Myrtle, intercepted on this one, and it led to a field goal. Don Horn hit number 11, Bobby Anderson, on this play, and it also led to a field goal. And by now you've guessed that the Broncos' problem was that they couldn't score a touchdown. Meanwhile, Oakland's Ken Stabler, number 12, and number 87, Raymond Chester, would settle for nothing less than a shot at 7 points. Seeing his receivers covered, Stabler swept in himself, and even the shadow knows he scored. The Oakland defense showed that it too had loads of pride and poise as number 41, Phil Villapiano's interception led to another Stabler to Chester hookup. Oakland defensive back Jimmy Warren, number 20, provided the clincher on a steal and go that gave the Raiders a 27-9 lead. Only then, after many object lessons, did Denver get the idea as Steve Ramsey hit Dickie Post for a touchdown. But by then, the Broncos had been whittled down to size, 27-16.
In Denver, a punishing Oakland defense set the tone. Phil Villapiano was everywhere at once, making the inches count. And suddenly, inches meant points as Jimmy Warren intercepted and streaked 55 yards for 6. Stabler to Chester gave an indication of why the Raiders would finish second in scoring in the entire NFL in 1971. Their touchdown team-up brought the game under control. Stabler then provided the insurance himself, and the Raiders had their third in a row. At last, they were ready to come home.
The sign says, "Welcome Philadelphia Eagles," because the Eagles, with their new coach Ed Kayat, were 0-4 and welcome everywhere. However, the Oakland Raiders found out early in the first half that the birds were flying high as number 28, Bill Bradley, made this interception. Number 11, Rick Arrington, to number 85, Gary Ballman, made the Eagles look like feathered fury. And Arrington to number 37, Tom Woodeshick, made it 10-0 Philadelphia at the half. For 30 minutes, the Eagles had soared high, dominating a game in which they were given little hope. But in the second half, they plummeted. Darryl LaMonica ignored an open Raymond Chester and instead hit number 25, Fred Biletnikoff, for 6 points. And in this game, Fred Biletnikoff became Oakland's all-time leading receiver with 262 receptions. LaMonica continued his bombing run by hitting Clarence Davis in the end zone. The fact that Davis was ruled out of bounds left Darryl undaunted as he came right back to number 10, Eldridge Dickey. Not only did last week mark the 4th time in 4 games that the Raiders have come from behind to win, but it also showcased another Raider trademark, the stunning scoring flurry. Number 43, George Atkinson, recovered an Eagle fumble which helped to give Oakland 3 touchdowns in the span of 1 minute, 19 seconds. Then, just to prove they were capable of more than instant touchdowns, the Raiders used number 44, Marv Hubbard, and number 32, Don Highsmith, to grind out a 7-play drive that topped off the Oakland victory at 34-10.
Finally, 5 weeks into the season, the Silver and Black returned to the Oakland Coliseum. The stadium built in response to their monumental rise as a pro football power. They had come home to meet the surging Philadelphia Eagles, who quickly took a 10-0 halftime lead. But even though short-handed, the Raiders would not shortchange the total sellout Coliseum crowd. A wide-open Fred Biletnikoff fooled everyone on this score as he kept on the road to a 1971 NFL pass receiving championship. And Raider runners, led by powerful Marv Hubbard, were end zone bound regardless of obstacles. Number 32, Don Highsmith, went in from 14 yards out. And then came the unexpected quick strike, long a trademark of the comeback-conscious Raiders, as George Atkinson scooped up a fumble and raced in to score. It was Oakland's 2nd touchdown in 15 seconds. It destroyed the Eagles and gave the Silver and Black 4 in a row. The Raiders, pro football's winningest team the past 5 years, were right on their winning ways.
For 4 consecutive weeks, the Oakland Raiders had been winners, and last week against Cincinnati, they were right on again. Obeying all signs, the Raiders, led by Darryl LaMonica to Raymond Chester, opened up a first-half lead of 17-0. What made this doubly painful to the Bengals is that Oakland has been considered a second-half team. But in the second half, it was the Bengal that roared as Kenny Anderson flipped to Essex Johnson, who blazed in to make the score 17-7. Darryl LaMonica fell prey to the Bengals' prowling defense as number 53, Bill Peterson, intercepted. Then Kenny Anderson made it a new ball game as he rolled right to tie the score at 17-all. To make matters worse, Oakland's Darryl LaMonica was forced to leave the game with an injury. And lo and behold, there on the field was the man from yesteryear, number 16, the marvelous miracle worker, George Blanda. right away, it was the 44-year-old George to number 44, Marv Hubbard, and Oakland led 24-17. But Cincinnati's Kenny Anderson was undaunted, and he came back to hit Speedy Thomas to make it 27-24 Bengals. But in the end, there was no stopping the magician of the minute as he drove his team goalward. All the way, it was George Blanda in command, rolling over the Bengals, but more important, fighting off the one enemy it seems unable to touch him, the clock. As usual, neither the years nor the seconds affected George Blanda as he handed off to Marv Hubbard and led Oakland to their 5th victory in a row, 31-27.
But for the Bengals, the inches went against them as Raymond Chester just managed to score. Marv Hubbard continued to shred opponents' defenses. And Hubbard showed Raider versatility by taking this perfect George Blanda pass in for 6 points. However, Paul Brown's Bengals are always tough for Oakland, and Cincinnati led 27-24 with time running out. But number 80, Art Toms, smothered the Bengal offense. Then Clarence Davis put the Raiders in close. Marv Hubbard strained in and gave Oakland another great come-from-behind victory.
Time has passed, and in Oakland, Dolly was a year older. Her birthday wish was, of course, that the Raiders would beat the Chiefs and take over sole possession of first place in the AFC West. And last week at the party, it was time to renew old acquaintances as Ben Davidson dropped in on Len Dawson. And it was a time for Raider rookie Jack Tatum, number 31, to show what he's learned in half the NFL season. And as always, it was time for the Otis Taylor Show. Taylor's big plays and Ed Podolak's second touchdown gave Kansas City a 20-10 lead, and Oakland was in trouble. All afternoon, Darryl LaMonica was ineffectual against the Chiefs, and his play left the Raiders uninspired. And so, midway in the last quarter, it was time for George Blanda. And it took George just 2 plays to put Oakland on the board. Raymond Chester grabbed one pass despite double coverage. And fabulous Fred Biletnikoff grabbed the touchdown. Blanda later added a field goal that made the final 20-20. And the only present Dolly got for her birthday was that George Blanda became the all-time career scoring leader in the NFL.
Rival, Kansas City came next, and as always in the tough AFC Western Division, it was all-out war. Ben Davidson dropped in on Lenny Dawson often. And so did number 84, Tony Klein, and number 55, Dan Connors, to sabotage the Chiefs' attack. But football remains a game of inches, as number 54 rookie linebacker Terry Mendenhall found out when, with the Raiders trailing, his fumble recovery was allowed, but his touchdown run wasn't. With the Chiefs ahead, 20-10, the Raider defense shut off the Chiefs' passing game. And the Raiders' air attack burst to life. "22-year pro veteran George Blanda connected with Chester, and then hit Biletnikoff to make it 20-17. The Raider line, now without tackle Bob Brown, who suffered a first-period knee injury, sprung Don Highsmith goalward. And George Blanda's last-minute field goal not only earned a 2020 comeback tie to keep the Raiders' 6-game unbeaten string alive, but also made Blanda pro football's all-time leading scorer.
In New Orleans, the Saints' field goal attempt became a fake which fooled everyone, including themselves. And despite the fact that Ed Hargett completed the pass, the Saints were in big trouble. They were up against the ever-dangerous Oakland Raiders. Even Archie Manning was no match for the cobra-quick Oakland secondary. Meanwhile, the Raider offense was, as usual, that sterling silver and black combination of LaMonica to Fred Biletnikoff. When Ed Hargett replaced Manning, he quickly caught up with Archie in one category of the passing department, thanks to number 43, George Atkinson. And then Pete Banaszak boiled over behind number 64, George Beeler, and ho-hum, it was Oakland 14, New Orleans nothing in the third period. But the Saints were far from finished as Ed Hargett led them on a land-grabbing expedition. The yards came tough, but the payoff was worthwhile. Number 42, Jim Strong, brought the Saints to within 14-7 as he slipped into a big hole and then on into the end zone. The Raiders countered with their old standby, Darrell to Fred. Simple but effective, as Fred was quick to point out to number 22, D'Artagnan Martin. But the Saints were reluctant to wither. They scored on a 2-yarder, and on the ensuing kickoff came up with a big break. And then, once again, Ed Hargett led them on a ground-gobbling sortie. And with just 13 seconds left in the game, Hargett hit Dave Parks in the end zone to tie it at 21-all. For the Saints, it was a moral victory. For the Raiders, it was their second tie in a row, which, of course, is like kissing your sister when she's got the mumps.
In New Orleans, number 85, Carlton Oates, and number 34, Gus Otto, made things tough for the Saints offense in the first half. Meanwhile, the Oakland secondary played the game of inches just right. While the defense made the inches count, the offense gobbled up enough yards to take a 14-0 lead. But the Saints benefited from a puzzling roughing call and went on to score. The Raiders countered, and the lead looked safe. But misfortune struck, a season-ending injury to linebacker Gus Otto, then a game-ending fumble recovery that was disallowed. And finally, the untimely penalties that gave the Saints second chances and a 21-21 tie.
Daryle Lamonica was having an unusual season. He was 21st in the league in passing percentage and in a three-way tie for 5th in touchdown passes. His favorite receiver was still Fred Biletnikoff, but last Sunday against Houston, Biletnikoff was tightly covered and was not a factor in the outcome. Once, cornerback Zeke Moore stole a pass, while Biletnikoff could only steal a piece of Moore's clothing. Of course, who needs a Fred Biletnikoff when on the other side you have your real star, Drew Bowie. Bowie put the Raiders ahead by a touchdown on their first series of the game. On the first Houston play following the score, quarterback Lynn Dickey set up Oakland's second touchdown with a pass directly to cornerback Nehemiah Wilson. On the next Houston series, another interception set up Oakland's touchdown number 3. Again to Drew Bowie, who caught his second professional touchdown pass. Down 21-0 in the first quarter, Dickey finally got the Oilers going in the right direction with a bullet to tight end Alvin Reed. Dickey followed with a lovely spiral toward Charlie Joyner, but George Atkinson intervened. The Raiders' third interception was a fitting conclusion to an amazing first quarter. In the second period, Lamonica scrambled to find another new receiver for his bombing runs, running back Don Highsmith, number 32. Highsmith's catch set up the Raiders' fourth touchdown, and then it was Dan Pastorini's turn to throw the interception. Jim Warren raced the fourth Raider interception 59 yards and ballooned the Oakland lead to 35-0. Next, a high snap from center caused Pastorini to be trapped at his own 1-yard line. But the Oakland offense was too exhausted to punch it in from there, so the Raiders had to settle for a field goal, which brought the score to a cozy 38-0 at half. In the second half, while the Oakland offense rested, Dan Pastorini got the Oilers 21 points, their highest total of the season. The game's final touchdown was set up by the game's most ludicrous play. Number 87, former Chicago Bear Lindsey Cole returned Jerry DePoyster's punt to the Oakland 1. The touchdown was averted only until Dan Pastorini could set up a play-action pass to number 32, rookie runner Ward Walsh. While the Oilers' 21 points were their season's high, they were no match for the highest-scoring team in the NFL, as the Raiders coasted to their season's high 41-21 and showed signs of waving bye-bye to the rest of the West.
The Oilers came to Oakland, California and paid dearly for the Raiders' frustration at 2 consecutive tie games. No Jeremiah Wilson's interception paved the way as LaMonica, behind protection from veteran Ron Mix, lifted a 63-yard strike to number 89, Drew Bowie. 2 more interceptions proved the Raiders would settle for no tie this day. Bowie's second score ballooned the Oakland lead to 21-0. Silver and black might and muscle ruled this day. Once again, Jimmy Warren slashed in, stole the ball, and weaved to pay dirt, and an impressive 41-21 win. It was the Raiders' 8th straight game without defeat.
Last week, the Oakland Raiders were 2-touchdown favorites over San Diego. So naturally, the charged-up Chargers opened up a 14-point lead behind the running of number 20, Mike Garrett. But the big play Raiders finally hit their stride as Darryl LaMonica fired strikes to number 87, Raymond Chester. Pete Banaszak's touchdown tied the score at 24. And at least one ref learned never to turn his back on Pete. Oakland finally surged into the lead when Darryl hit number 13, Rod Sherman, at the goal to make it 34-24 with 6 minutes to go. But then the Chargers borrowed a Raider trademark and began a furious finishing spurt. Hadel to number 84, Walker Gillette, made it 34-31 with 3:09 remaining. And it was Hadel driving San Diego goalward again. But the Raiders are a team with many arcane ways of pulling out last-second victories. And that old silver and black magic appeared in the person of number 55, Dan Connors. Then it was merely a matter of punter Jerry DePoyster running out the clock and taking an intentional safety. For Oakland, it's still first place. For San Diego, it was close, but no cigar.
When the Chargers arrived, they set out to avenge the earlier shutout and leaped into a substantial 24-10 lead. But unlike many teams, the Raiders are traditionally most dangerous when behind. And soon they struck back for yardage that blew away the Charger lead. Rod Sherman's great catch made it 34-24 Oakland. But the Chargers, in their final game under coach Sid Gilman, rallied to trail by only 34-31. With time fleeting, they were driving again when an intense rush set up Dan Connors' clutch interception. Then Coach John Madden instructed punter Jerry DePoyster to take an intentional safety while running out the clock, preserving a 9-game undefeated string that experts had labeled impossible for injury-racked Oakland.
In Oakland, California, two pro football powers collided as the Raiders met the Baltimore Colts. So trailing by 30 points, they summoned the miracle worker himself, Old George. Number 16, George Blanda, finally got Oakland moving in the fourth quarter as he twice connected with number 25, Fred Biletnikoff, for touchdown. Although he rallied the Raiders, George Blanda's magic wasn't enough to overcome an awesome Baltimore attack. Tough defense, the steadying hand of old pro John Unitas, and the devastating running of young Norm Boulash led the wave that washed Oakland away 37-14. The victory kept the Colts' playoff hopes alive as they marked time until a rematch with the Miami Dolphins.
The defending world champion Baltimore Colts came next, and the battle-worn Raiders had problems. Problems that turned opportunities into mistakes by inches. Even Blanda's toss to Biletnikoff could not stop the Colts, who rolled on and put an end to the hard-earned Oakland unbeaten string.
In Atlanta last week, the Falcons welcomed the Oakland Raiders with their own newly developed variety of Southern hospitality. Oakland's Marv Hubbard ran for 143 yards, but he didn't appreciate the Falcons' hospitality. It was the kind of day when every gain was a tough game. Most of the time, it was tough enough just to hang on to the ball as each team suffered 5 turnovers. Only once could the high-powered Raiders cross the Atlanta goal, when Darryl LaMonica threw to league-leading receiver Fred Biletnikoff in the end zone. Against the NFC's top-ranked pass defense, Biletnikoff managed 6 receptions.
In Atlanta the following week, the weather was rainy, the field muddy, and the ball slippery. Slippery enough to contribute to a pair of crucial fumbles, which were keys to a Falcon win and Oakland's second straight loss.
The Kansas City Chiefs had not won a division title since 1966, when they were the AFL's first Super Bowl team. Since then, their fiercest rivals, the Oakland Raiders, had won 4 straight Western Division titles. But last week, the Chiefs drew first blood with a Lynn Dawson touchdown pass to Otis Taylor, pro football's top yardage receiver. In the early going, the Oakland attack consisted mainly of a Darryl LaMonica handoff to Marv Hubbard, who loves to run against the Chiefs. For the most part, LaMonica was ineffective, and each of the Chiefs' front 4 relished taking a shot at him. Trailing 10-0 with 4:16 to go in the first half, LaMonica was derricked, and in came an old guy who had been there before. 44-year-old George Blanda immediately marched the Raiders to their first touchdown, which came on a sweep by Marv Hubbard. With 8 seconds left in the half, Lynn Dawson threw to Dennis Holman to stop the clock. But Holman almost scored and almost used up the clock. With just 1 second left, the Chiefs got a field goal and had 13-7 at the half. Early in the second half, Buck Buchanan handled Blanda like anything but the priceless antique that he is. But old George was far from finished. Cooling the rush with his deft screen passes to Marv Hubbard, Blanda again moved the Raiders goalward. On the first play of the fourth quarter, Blanda threw for Rod Sherman, but Johnny Robinson interfered. From the one, Hubbard scored again, and the Raiders were on top 14-13. Then with 5 minutes to play, 3rd and 10 from his own 7, Lynn Dawson went for Otis Taylor in one of the game's key plays. 3 more passes to Otis Taylor had the ball on the Oakland 41, and from there occurred another of the game's big plays. Jim Warren, number 20, was charged with interference. And after 3 running plays, Jan Stenerud put the Chiefs back in front 16-14 with 1.5 minutes to play. 1.5 minutes for George Blanda to work his magic, but this was to be Kansas City's day to cheer. Jim Kearney intercepted a 4th down desperation pass, and Hank Stram's Chiefs had won the West from the Raiders for the first time in 5 years. For the Chiefs, a real cause for celebration. For the Raiders, a time to ponder, an unbelievably abrupt conclusion to an unsuccessful run for pro football's championship.
And so it came down to the big one. The Raiders and Chiefs battling for the title in pro football's toughest division. It's been that way for years, and it's always a hitting, bruising, punishing conflict. Kansas City took an early lead on a Dawson to Otis Taylor aerial and a Stenerud field goal. The Raiders struck back when Nehemiah Wilson intercepted. Then Marv Hubbard blasted in for the score and almost drove the ball underground. It's that kind of rivalry. As time was running out in the first half, the Chiefs made a big first down. And with just 1 second left, their lead jumped to 13-7. Inches, seconds, and penalties proved decisive. An obvious interference led to Hubbard's second touchdown, and the Silver and Black battled back to a 14-13 fourth quarter lead. Safety George Atkinson's interception halted a Kansas City rally. Then George Blanda's three-pointer was blocked, a matter of inches. As the Chiefs struggled to survive, Nehemiah Wilson dove for the game-clinching interception, but it was not to be. The officials called it a trap, a matter of inches. Given another chance, Dawson hit Taylor in heavy traffic. This no-harm interference was called on an overthrown desperation pass. And then Stenerud's kick denied Oakland their 5th consecutive division championship. The season had come down to one game, one play, 1 inch, 1 penalty, 1 second, and heartbreak for the Raiders.
In Oakland, the Denver Broncos wondered what they could do to make 1971 something other than just another losing season. They tried some bone-jarring defense, and it worked. They tried a fake field goal, and in its own way, that worked. But when they needed the big break, the Broncos saw the kind of thing that has become all too familiar, the fumble that gets away. Even a fake punt from the end zone backfired, and Oakland beat Denver again. Pete Banaszak scored Oakland's 3rd touchdown after the fake punt. The first came on a pass from Darryl LaMonica to Raymond Chester, number 87. But Denver did accomplish something. Floyd Little, their all-pro halfback, shot his season total up to 1,133 yards, a career high for him, and the best total in pro football in 1971. But as happens all too often for Floyd and his teammates, the best never counts. Floyd took a second quarter handoff that apparently had narrowed the score to 14-10. But it was ruled that Floyd stepped out of bounds on the 20. And even though Denver had several cracks at scoring, they couldn't when they needed it. Steve Ramsey's pass to Clem Turner came with only seconds left, as the Raiders, who had their own frustrations to take out, beat Denver 21-13.
And against Denver, every Raider deserved awards. They had finally lost the title, but never their pride. Against Denver, Pete Banaszak got his 8th rushing score, a Raider season record. LaMonica, playing with a hand that would require off-season surgery, found Raymond Chester for another score. Number 23, a now healthy Charlie Smith, made big plays. His return added a missing dimension to Oakland's potent offense. The defense with Tatum, Dwayne Benson, Bill Enyart, and the rest stood tall on a goal line stand that gave meaning to the motto, pride and poise. The Denver victory gave Oakland an 8-4-2 record, better than teams winning division championships and playing for conference titles. The total commitment to excellence made by Al Davis in 1963 continues, and the greatness of the Raiders is in their future. But when this grueling 1971 season is examined against all the great glory years, the silver and black may well have had their finest hour.